Okay, so last time we met, folks, we were talking about weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. We went through all the 8 different weaknesses, and we talked about how many of these weaknesses were created because the Americans were scared of a strong central government, right? They were concerned about what happened during the Revolutionary era, and did they want another king to take away their rights? No, so they purposely made this government to be intentionally weak. They tried to solve some of those problems, did not pan out as well as they had hoped, and we started talking about this idea of international weaknesses. So what we're going to start talking about today, folks, is again the international weaknesses and what made the Articles of Confederation weak in the eyes of the international community. And one of the first weaknesses we were talking about was the British, right? So the British did not respect the Americans. In fact, the British refused to do what first? Yeah, the British refused to leave their military forts in the Northwest Territory, even though they promised to do so. And again, is America going to be able to force them out? No, because what does America lack? A military, an army. There's nothing that the Americans can do. What else are the British doing? They're also inciting Native American rebellions. They're inciting Native American rebellions. So the second thing that the British are doing is they are encouraging or inciting Native American rebellion. So here's another problem. The British are giving weapons to Native Americans, and they're saying, hey, go point your guns at the Americans and go fight them. And if you fight them, maybe you'll win your land back. So they're actually encouraging or inciting Native Americans to fight against the Americans. And are the Americans unhappy about that? Yeah. And again, can they do anything about it? No. So that's also pretty foolish of them. The third thing that the British are doing is what? Impressment. Good. So they're performing impressment. Now again, does that mean like the British do magic tricks so when the colonists the Americans are impressed? No, impressment is when they force the American sailors into their navy, right? So again, remember that the British are showing America no respect. But can the Americans do anything about it? Because they lack an army. So that's pretty problematic. I mean, America says, you have to stop that. But again, the British will say, oh yeah, well, you in what army? Are you going to come and stop me? Oh, wait, you don't have an army. So that's going to be pretty problematic. But the insults don't start there, because we know that the British don't like us. But there are other countries that are also not taking us seriously. Among them is France. France is also not taking America seriously. And France is not taking America seriously, rather because they're mad at America. Now, if you remember, folks, did France gain anything after the American Revolution? Well, they didn't gain any land, they didn't gain any resources, but had they spent a lot trying to fight the American Revolution? Yeah, they gave America weapons, guns, supplies, and they were hoping to get something. They got nothing. And did they fight that war because they were America's best friend? No, why did the French fight the American Revolution? Because they wanted to make the British look weak, and they wanted revenge on the British, right? That's why they fought it. They weren't best friends with the Americans. They wanted revenge on the British, and they wanted to make the British weak. Well, because the French got nothing out of the American Revolution, they decide to start harassing America, and they demand their debts be repaid immediately. So the one thing that the French do is that they demand that their debts be repaid immediately. And they start attacking American ships, saying, hey, America, where's my money? Here's my money, America. I want my money. I told you I wanted my money on Friday. It's my understanding today is Monday. And I'm looking at my hand and it's empty. So my understanding is you have not given me my money. So I would like to repeat my question. Where's my money? Well, America is unable to pay back France because does America have any money? Is America's economy weak? Will they be unable to pay? And will they constantly be harassed, therefore, by the French? Yes, and there's nothing they can do about it. So the French will continue to harass American ships, impress American ships, take American ships, and there's nothing we can do about it because we're weak. problem there? Most definitely. It makes us look horribly and terribly weak. The third international weakness we're dealing with then is with the Spanish. The Spanish are also not taking us seriously. And in fact, what the Spanish have done, ignore. Is the Spanish have denied us access to the Mississippi River and the port of New Orleans, which is here. The Spanish have denied the Americans access to the Mississippi River and the port of New Orleans. Now, what might the Americans be using the Mississippi River and the port of New Orleans for? What? They might be using it for trade. The Americans are using it for trade. And yet Spain says, you can't use the Mississippi River or the port of New Orleans. The Spanish are denying Americans use of the Mississippi River and the port of New Orleans without paying a fee. Now, why can they boss America around, but they would not dare do this to the British or the French? Because America has no army. Again, they ask, oh yeah, America, you're going to stop us from forcing you to pay a fee? Oh, you can't, because you don't have an army. So there's nothing that you can do. In fact, folks, does Spain have an interest in seeing a weak America? Of course they do, because if you remember, Spain owned all this territory right here. So does Spain have an interest in seeing a weak America? Because what could they do if America is weak? Maybe take over. By the way, does France have an interest in seeing a weak America? Sure, because France owns all this territory right here. So what could they do if America's weak? Take it over. By the way, does England have an interest in seeing a weak America? Sure, because England owns all this territory up here. So what could they do? Take it over. So does everyone have an interest in seeing America weak? Sure. But again, it makes sense that America is weak compared to France, England, Spain, because those are powerful countries. That's not ridiculous. But it becomes a problem when the Barbary pirates are also not taking America seriously. So the Barbary pirates are also not taking America seriously. And that's a problem. You know, countries don't take us seriously, fine. They have a massive navy. But pirates are picking on America. Just like regular pirates are attacking American ships, holding them hostage, and telling the U.S. government, if you want your ship back, you're going to have to pay a $15,000 fine. Like, you're taking our ships hostage. Would these pirates have ever dared attack a British ship? No, because if they attack a British ship, the British king would be like, what? They took one of our ships? Send everybody! Just to make an example out of the Barbary pirates. But if an American ship is taken over, the Americans would be like, what? They took one of our ships? Quick, send them money. Because what option do we have? Do we have a navy to prevent them? Do we have a navy to protect our ships? No, we have no military. And so again, big countries aren't taking us seriously, but even pirates are not taking us seriously. They're attacking our ships and have no fear of reprisal because there's nothing that we can do. So how does this all make America look? It makes us look rather weak. In any case, folks, ultimately the lesson here to be learned with regard to international weaknesses is that countries knew that America was weak and divided. They knew that we were weak and divided, and they had no respect for us. Would any of this have happened if America was a strong country? Not at all. So it just goes to show America was pretty terrible way back when. So we've kind of beat up on America for a little bit now, so I thought it'd be nice to talk about its successes as an Articles of Confederation. Because America did a good few things in this early government. You know, they had some positives. So let's talk about the successes of the Articles of Confederation. So the successes of the Articles of Confederation. And again, you can always abbreviate the Articles of Confederation, AOC. The successes of the Articles of Confederation. Okay, here we go. So, you guys remember all that land that the British gave us in the Northwest Territory after the Treaty of Paris? They gave us all this land for free. They're like, here, have this, so that we can expand. Now, if you were a colonist, or not a colonist, but if you were an American, and you just found out that there was all this available land to the west of you, what are you going to want to do immediately? You're going to want to expand. And so the fear was that colonists would run out and be like, start planting the flag. They're like, oh, that's mine. And put the flag there. Oh, that's mine. Oh, that's mine. And like, oh, all the way over there, that river's mine. And you see that tree is? That's mine too. That's mine. I called it. No, that's mine. You can have that, but I called this. Now imagine that, but like 2.5 million people crossing into the West, just calling dibs on whatever they wanted. Is that going to be a bit chaotic? Most definitely. And so what the American government realized under the Articles was, we can't have that. We can't just have random people putting flags in the ground and calling dibs on land. That's not the way this should work. Should there be a more organized way to do that? Sure. And so they passed a law called the Land Ordinance of 1785, which is a very organized way to do this. And the Land Ordinance of 1785 was their first success. And what the Land Ordinance of 1785 did was that it created an orderly settlement of the Northwest Territory. It created an orderly settlement of the Northwest Territory. It created an orderly settlement of the Northwest Territory. So instead of just random blocks or random like spaces that people would buy, you don't need to know all the details, but what would happen is they would take a square, like a 6 square mile of land. They would take that square like they've done here, and each of these was a township of 6 square miles, and those 6 square miles would be divided into 36 different squares, each about 640 acres, and then they would sell each plot to someone for $1 an acre. So you could buy 640 acres for $640, and that's how they made it organized. So like, this is your land, that's my land, that's Steve's land, this is his land, that's her land, that's his land, and the idea is that, would this be a lot more organized? Yeah, so this was not crazy, it wasn't ridiculous. We even set land aside for like schools and parks and whatever else, so we tried to make it as organized as possible. Now, the smart part about this is because we were selling this land, how did the Articles of Confederation government benefit? Because we're selling your land, how did we benefit? So we got some money. So it did provide some income for us. So the benefit is that it did provide some income, which is a plus. The other benefit, though, is that we use this money to pay for someone else. I mean, we use this money to pay for who? The military soldiers, because we had no money to pay them before. So if they are unable to pay, well, then we should probably give them land. Okay? So the idea is we use this land to pay soldiers. And by the way, what's better? Money or land? Land is way better. Because you can go ahead and use that and grow food again and again and again. So the idea is we're going to use that land to pay the soldiers, which is definitely better. Now, by the way, that land was not the most ideal land, but still, better than nothing. So, should we consider this a success of the Articles?
Yeah.
Most definitely. The second success, then, is the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. And the Northwest Ordinance of 1787 was also very successful, because here's the thing. Once we have all those people moving out west in this very organized way, and once we start having all those people move to the west, what are we going to do with all that land? Are we just going to make Pennsylvania to just be super long all the way across America, and just be like one long strip of Pennsylvania from the Atlantic to the Pacific? That was one suggestion. Some people, let's just make Pennsylvania 3,000 miles long, and Georgia 3,000 miles long, and New Hampshire 3,000 miles long, and these states would just go all the way across the country. But would that be a bad idea? Would it be very hard to govern that state? And so they proposed the Northwest Ordinance. And what this did was that it created the process of making new states. It created the process of making new states. So bonus. It created the process of making new states. And this is considered a success. And by the way, you definitely need to know this one, because this one always comes up on the AP test. This is the same process that we used to make California, Alaska, Nevada, what have you. Even though we had a new government, we still used this process to create new states thereafter. So that's why it's considered to be very useful. We wouldn't exist without the Northwest Ordinance. Again, the details are not that important to you, but they would say is that once there's like 5,000 people in a territory, they can have an assembly, and once they have an assembly, they can have a governor, and once they have a governor, and they had 60,000 people living in a territory, they could write a state constitution, and they could send the state constitution to Congress, and Congress could vote whether or not they would let them have a constitution, and then they would vote to see if they were a state, and then that's how you become a state. It's a very long process. But should it be? And should anyone just be able to become a state? No, but they created that process, and those guidelines allowed us to become a state in 1848, or 1850 rather. So, impressive stuff. Nonetheless, the other important thing that the Northwest Ordinance did was that it banned slavery in the Northwest Territory. It banned slavery in the Northwest Territory, which is good, because then there wasn't slavery there. By the way, this is the Northwest Territory, so was slavery going to be there anyway?
Yeah.
No, it's the North. The North. So likely there wasn't going to be slavery there anyway, but is it important that they tried to prevent it before it could spread there? And that is the significant part. Cool? That's the second success. The third success was that the Articles of Confederation was a successful, failed experiment. It was a successful, failed experiment. Now, I know that might be an oxymoron and not make sense, but after I tell you, you're the one who's going to feel like a moron. I'm just kidding. But, was the Articles of Confederation a failure? Was it a failure, guys? Yeah. And is that a good thing? Yes. Why was it good? Who can tell me why it was good that the Articles of Confederation failed? Yes, sir. We could learn from our mistakes. Did we learn that a weak government was terrible? Yeah, but did we have to try it first? Yes. So ultimately, folks, what we have to know is that this was a successful failed experiment, but that's okay, because we had to learn that a weak government was terrible. We needed time to learn that a weak government was terrible. Another way I like to describe it is that we needed time to develop political maturity. We needed time to develop political maturity. We needed time to develop political maturity. Because again, would you describe us as being young kids when we first started out? And we were afraid of a lot of things, and we weren't mature enough to see that a strong government can still be a good government. And so we needed time to develop political maturity to have a strong government. Another key success of this failed experiment is that it got us through the critical period. The Articles of Confederation held us together throughout the critical period. Now, what was the critical period? What time period was the critical period? From when to when? When did the critical period begin? Between what two events? From the end of the American Revolution until we had a U.S. Constitution. So between the Revolution to the U.S. Constitution from 1783, really, or 1781 to 1787, we had this Articles of Confederation government. And it held us together because could we have fallen into civil war? Most definitely. Our government could have collapsed. But ultimately, what ends up happening is that it held us together and it prevented civil war. Yeah. the U.S. Constitution. Between the American Revolution to the U.S. Constitution. And lastly, you can make the argument that this was a stepping stone to the U.S. Constitution. You can make the argument that this was a stepping stone to the U.S. Constitution. Everyone good? It served as a stepping stone to the U.S. Constitution. But if you think about it, folks, here's the U.S. Constitution, and here's us way back when. And could we reach the U.S. Constitution? No, it's too high. But if we had the Articles of Confederation, then we can jump from here to here, and it served as a stepping stone for us to the U.S. Constitution. Cool? Okay. So, here's what happened next. Henry, will you shut up? I'm not kidding. You're not taking notes, you're talking, you're messing around, and you're pissing me off. I watch other people taking notes, and you're not. So if you're too tired to come to class, then don't come to class. But if you're too tired at least, don't bother other people. You understand? Okay, knock it off. The Annapolis Convention. So here's what happened. At the Annapolis Convention, delegates from the different states met to discuss making the Articles of Confederation government stronger. So again, at the Annapolis Convention, the delegates met to discuss making the Articles of Confederation government stronger. Because were many people already realizing that this government sucked? They were losing ships, they were being attacked. So many delegates met to discuss making the Articles of Confederation government stronger. They wanted to meet, say, what can we do? Maybe we can make a bank, or maybe we can pass a tax or something. But we got to make this stronger because it's just not working out for us. The problem is, only 5 states showed up. And because only 5 states showed up, what were they able to accomplish at the Annapolis Convention? Nothing. Because you need at least 9 states to pass laws, and you need all 13 to change the Constitution, so they could get nothing done. But does this at least show that there were concerns about this government now? And people were willing to meet about it. But 8 didn't show up because were people okay with that weakness? They're like, yeah, so they're attacking our ships. But that's still better than me as a state giving up my rights. So we're still people content with the fact that, yeah, maybe we're weak, but at least I have my rights. I mean, that was okay with most. So everyone go with that so far? Okay. So here's what's going to change everyone's mind, and this is considered to be one of the most important events in American history. Shays Rebellion. So this is the kick in the butt that America needed to realize, wow, our government is terrible. In 1786, you had something called Shays Rebellion in Massachusetts. And here's what happened. This rebellion, led by Daniel Shay here. Here he is reloading his rifle. Back in 1786, Daniel Shay led a rebellion of debt-ridden farmers. Now, what's a debt-ridden farmer? The farmer that's what? Has lots of debt. And he was leading this rebellion of debt-ridden farmers because they were rebelling, because their land was being taken away. Why might these debt-ridden farmers have had... How do you ask this question? Why might the land of these farmers have been taken away? That doesn't sound right grammatically. Why was their land being taken away? These debt-ridden farmers. Why was their land being taken away? Because they were in debt, and what couldn't they do? Pay their debts. So their land was being taken away because they couldn't pay their debts. And by the way, why couldn't the farmers who were former soldiers not pay their debts? Not because they weren't soldiers anymore, but because they were what? No, not because of that. No, because they were never paid. They were never paid. Folks, did the Articles of Confederation government have money to pay all these soldiers? No, so they didn't pay them. And so the soldiers didn't have money, and could they pay off their farm debts? No, so they lost their land, but who did they blame? The government. It's the government's fault that we're not getting paid. It's not my fault. My land shouldn't be taken away. It's the government's fault. And so are they just going to let their land be taken away? No. So they revolted. They rebelled. They burned down the courthouses. They burned down the tax collector's house. I mean, they just went on a rampage. And how easily is the Articles of Confederation government going to be able to put down this rebellion? Is it going to be easy for them? Why not? Why is it going to be difficult for them to put down this rebellion? Because they have no army. So folks, here's the problem. Massachusetts sends in their militia. Okay? But the problem is what's beginning is something called mobocracy. And what is mobocracy? It's mob rule. It's mob rule. And the mob is now in charge. And is a mob organized and rational? Do they think clearly about things? No. And so mob rule has taken place, and Massachusetts is struggling to put down this rebellion. Because is Georgia and South Carolina going to send their troops to help Massachusetts out? No, they're not. Eventually, this rebellion will grow, and might other states consider sending their troops after that point? Because what are they now concerned about? It might spread. Well, eventually, folks, it takes over 3 weeks for them to put down this rebellion of farmers. What does that suggest about the government when it takes them 3 weeks to put down a rebellion of farmers? That they are horribly, horribly weak. So what we have to understand about the Shays Rebellion is that it made many realize that the government was weak because they could not put down a small rebellion like Shays Rebellion. And what they realized is what? They need a stronger government. What Shays Rebellion ultimately made them realize is that they were going to need a stronger government. And we'll talk about that government that they'll create tomorrow.